Hey there, it's Andrew, and today we're going to continue talking about some issues involving the United States of America. Um, so there's two videos so far, in particular on this topic. Um, I'm not going to go over them in super detail. I've already done that, but I do need to use a little bit of a recap, or rather, just a few points of it as a springboard to get into this next topic. So, um, on the eve of July 4th, the 250th anniversary of Independence Day in the United States of America, I had a dream. Did not ask, was not like praying or asking God to show me some kind of dream or vision or anything about America. It just happened. And so, the long story short of the dream, like I said, go back to the previous videos for more detail. The very, very short of it is that the dream came in two parts. The first part was about Donald Trump passing away, about a year left into his term, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter than a year. But he passed away, like in his sleep. He was, doing his regular thing. No one really expected it, and then one day he just didn't wake up. There may have been some questions about foul play, but it definitely was not like a JFK or Charlie Kirk type of incident. It was more, if there was, and that's the big thing, if there was, it could have been, or it looked like it would have been a way more subtle sort of thing. And so that's the first half of the dream. There's this distinction because the way that dream came about, or the way that it felt, like the way that it looked, was kind of like, oh, interesting, like this is plausible, like it could happen. Or it could be symbolic, strictly speaking. It could be something where it's like, maybe he has until the last year of his presidency to where that solidifies his legacy, whatever it is. And any kind of good legacy, or any kind of good, from the perspective of heaven, from the perspective of, the eternal standpoint of the will of God and things he wants to do here on the earth. I go back and read, the books of First and Second Kings, First and Second Chronicles. It talks about, this king did some things that were right in the sight of the Lord, but the Lord had this against them, or this king was totally wicked in the sight of the Lord. It's interesting how, those books in Scripture are given like an evaluation. And what's interesting, just a quick note, I guess, in the Jewish perspective, what's very interesting is like, for Christians, or to the Western mind, we consider those history books within the Bible. Because the Bible has all kinds of types of literature within it. It's not just one book. Bible, Biblia, means library, okay? So it's not one book, it's a collection of 66 different books. You've got the Gospels, you've got different letters and epistles, you've got prophecy, you've got wisdom literature, and you do have history. You have all these different kind of things going on. And what's interesting is, from the Jewish perspective, those historic books, like Kings, the Book of Kings in particular, that's considered prophecy. Even though it's telling about past events, it's from a prophetic perspective, or rather the perspective of the kingdom of heaven, the perspective of God. Whereas Chronicles, which is interesting because Chronicles is considered part of the writings, not the prophets, in their tradition in the Tanakh, because when you read Kings and Chronicles side by side, Chronicles is more from the perspective of man, man's relationship with God, where the tone of the book for Kings is a bit different. Anyways, I didn't mean to go on to that rabbit trail. I just think that stuff is so fascinating. I think it's really interesting. I think I wish they would teach more of this, to people growing up in church. I think there's more of a hunger for the depth and even the academic rigor or the scholarship. Not that we're placing our value as believers on, head knowledge, but I just think that there's something fulfilling when people have something of depth to engage and chew upon. But I digress. That was a whole thing to talk about how we've seen from the Bible how God evaluates different kings, how God evaluates different administrations, okay? So what I'm saying is, the first half of the dream that I saw about the passing away of Donald Trump. It's like the manner in which I saw it, it's like, oh, that seems like it could be a plausible scenario, or it could also be something metaphorical. Time will tell. Um, the major point I'm trying to make is it's not predictions, so to speak, that I'm interested in, but I'm here to say, like, what did I see, um, what did I feel like God was showing me, and then um, even though I don't have the whole picture, Scripture says we see through a glass darkly. Paul writes in the New Testament. So, because even more than the literal part, there's something metaphorical about it that's even bigger picture that we'll get into here in just a moment. So the second part of the dream, which I think is where the real meat of it is that the second part, it definitely switched into something metaphorical, in which I saw the Republican Party. Um, they could not determine the time. They couldn't determine the times in the season that it was. They did not have any substance, but rather they were exposed. They were found out. They were embarrassed. They were ashamed. Um, you know, Misdeeds, evil deeds, things were coming to light that really shook the Republican Party, its establishment, its place in the United States of America. So that's the dream in a nutshell. Like I said, please go back if you want to get more like specific details about imagery in the dream, plus other more detailed and specific thoughts, where I talk about that. The first dream is called "The Passing Away: A Dream: Trump, America, the Republican Party." Um, I filmed it on July 4th. I think I may have actually released it on July 5th, though. And then the other one is a video I released yesterday. Um, it's also called The Passing Away. It's just called The Passing Away, the Republican Party, where I try to spend, it's a recap of everything, but I try to spend more time specifically on the Republican Party. And so one of the last points in that video that I made, like I said, this is all building up to springboard into something else, is that what I found really interesting is the passing away of Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. And so, once again, no matter how you feel about him, people are going to mourn him. There are people that may not have agreed with policy decisions that he supported or championed. I'll go ahead and say that I don't, or I didn't. He's if you're not familiar with that term neocon, neoconservative, become more familiar with that. I'll bring that up here in just a moment, actually. But Lindsey Graham really represents the neocon establishment of the Republican Party. Big government Republican, big government conservative, so-called, right? Whereas the idea of being a conservative in America is to want to have smaller, more limited government. So, anyways, but another thing that he was, I guess, known for was being like a warmonger, being a war hawk, being someone that really pushes for America to be at war and embroiled in conflicts across the globe. And so anyways, he has this legacy. He has this, and we also talked about like things in his life that just seem odd, right? Like him visiting, this 71-year-old unmarried man visiting Disney World, holding a bubble wand and seeming to follow around kids or whatever. So anyways, I won't speak any more on that. I don't want to speak ill of the dead. I mean, I hope that he knew God, had a place in his heart of repentance, the desire to change, the desire to really know Jesus. I mean, I hope that is all good and where it needed to be. But once again, the things that we're talking about, it's not pro-Republican or anti-Republican. It's not pro-Trump or anti-Trump. It's all above that. It's all above that. In this day and age, I feel like I can't say that enough. With the way attention spans and sound bites are in this culture, and people not having the slowness to absorb and meditate and really hear what, others may be saying. But anyways, so with the passing of Lindsey Graham, what I'm getting to is that's where I left off with the video yesterday. In how, like, about a week, roughly speaking, after I had that dream about Trump, it's like such a similar thing happens. Not to the same person I had the dream about, but to another person in that Republican sphere at a very high level. They just, seemed like they were doing their regular thing. Nothing to really indicate a major decline in health. Contrasting that with, say, like Mitch McConnell, in his, battles with health that he's been having. And then one day he doesn't wake up, and the official story is it was like a short sickness, and then died of natural causes, passed in his sleep. But people were wondering, well, was there foul play involved? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. And maybe there will be an autopsy or a toxicology report or something to reveal the truth on that. Don't know. So I was just saying the other day, once again, it's not like I never ever want to be in this place of like keeping a scorecard of like, oh, look what I got right or what I got wrong. Well, it's not me. Okay, all I'm doing is relating things I see. Surrendered vision. That's what I want to have. And so like things I see spiritually, like in prayer, in dreams, in visions, but also, testimonies of like, whether it's like casting out demons or just other things, right? I want to talk about these sorts of things and testimonies that maybe in a lot of church settings in America or in the West may not be welcome or may be kind of taboo, and in places where they are welcome, there may have maybe people who have abused such platforms or have like not delivered it the best as they should. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to be perfect at that or whatever. I just want to be a surrendered vessel. That's all. So once again, I was bringing up the eerie feeling within me, so to speak, of that parallel of like having a dream that was had a feeling very similar to that, just with a different figure, but a senator and not the president, but still very much in that same sphere, in that same space. And I was commenting how it was perhaps a sign to be like, okay, let's be alert and be alert of the season. And if there is a shaking of the Republican Party, well, what does that mean, right? Because my angle isn't like, well, how do we win more elections? How do we do better at politics? It's not that, and I'm not saying that those things aren't important. It's like I want leaders who are competent and that can govern the country well and be righteous, and want to do good things and bring peace to the land. Yes, I want that. But the idea more so is like just speaking what I'm seeing in the spirit, what I feel like God's showing me, and then saying, okay, so what's the time and season? How do we pray? How do we prepare? And how can more people see and know Jesus through these things? Or to be prepared for like what could be happening in the world that would alter or change people's perception of God and Jesus even further in ways that the enemy would want. To further create that division from our source, from our Creator, and from our Savior, and the blood that He shed and gave up, the life He gave up on the cross and took back up in resurrection. The strategies and things that would further separate man from that. And so, it's a bigger cosmic sort of picture between good versus evil that I want to talk about, but these things play out in our natural physical world. And the closer that we come to the revealing of all things, Jesus, the closer we get to that, the natural world and the spiritual world, those things are going to collide. But anyway, so springboarding from all that, I've spent enough time on that, but just really this time focusing especially on that Lindsey Graham piece that I really got to more in the end of the last video. So just talking about how that was interesting, you know, that to me was just crazy. Felt quite surreal, quite interesting. And so that leads me to talk about the possible potential formation of a third party in American politics. So first of all, I want to say, like, don't put your trust in man, okay? It's like, could God use a... All right, big picture up front before I go into, like, minutia of any kind of dream or any kind of symbolism or any kind of thing like that. Potentially, we could be seeing the formation of a third party, and I actually had like a discussion with someone who knows Thomas Massey, which we'll talk about here in a second about that. This was months and months ago, and I'm like, man, I feel like that could be happening, and this person was like, no, I don't think so. Because I think Thomas Massey would definitely be, if not the face, but a leader or a force in such a movement, right? But so going on, with things that are coming to the Earth, especially in terms of artificial intelligence and increased surveillance and control of the monetary system in even a greater way than there is now, with central bank digital currency that can be programmed, tracked, and traced. Programmed, that's really important. Understanding how they can do that, what that actually means, and the implications. Because it doesn't just mean that the currency is digital, like programming what you can and cannot buy, or how often, or even putting expiration dates on your digital, money, your digital money, all kinds of stuff. So there's things in the works that kind of really puts us in that end game where people talk about a one world government or a one world beast system. Okay, and not to be afraid of it. Nothing. I never want anything I say to engender fear in anybody, but it's to understand where we are in history and just understanding, like, at some point Jesus is coming back. Jesus is coming back. It's not a fairy tale like Christians treat it. A lot of Christians are there in their left brain, not their right. They've never really sat and thought about or contemplated or considered deeply what is it going to feel like? What is it going to be like? What's it going to taste like? What's it going to smell like when things change, when it's different? Like, and that's part of the reason why we have, like, cessationism, like when I've talked about dreams and visions and such, where I've seen Jesus, or where or like my wife and I have cast out demons, or we've seen other people cast out demons. It's like there are big sections of Christianity where that's just so scary to them, but it's like, but go back and read the Bible. This stuff is in Scripture. Do you believe it or not? And they'll say they believe it, but it's like they believe it on paper. They believe it as a list of bullet points that they have to mentally ascribe to, but has it been embodied? Has it been lived? Is it the desire of your heart? Not to have the experiences per se and to have cool stories. It's just to embody, like, there's a living God who actually does things in and through his people and talks to his people and things like that. See, I'd much rather talk about this than politics. But a third political party, not that we put our trust in the political party to fix everything, not that we put our trust in the political party to be perfect and make all these, permanent, lasting changes, but simply as a buffer, as a maybe even buying time or stalling for time. That may seem pessimistic to some people, but I'm just trying to be real with it, real with you here. It's like, could a third party really be used to do what people thought Trump was going to do, or to finish what he said he was going to do, or things like that? So I was mentioning surveillance state, I was mentioning artificial intelligence, as well as, foreign wars and foreign involvement. Won't get into the details about any of that here. But obviously, whether it's Ukraine, Iran, Israel, China, Russia, what have you, foreign involvement, war, and the threat of nuclear weapons is definitely something on people's minds. So all those issues being some of the main issues, that's where I think a third party could really emerge and try to address that. Like I said, essentially to provide a space in America, so to speak. Maybe that's not the right term, a space, but like to provide conditions, to set conditions in America to make a surveillance state harder, or when there has to be a wilderness season for people who do not want to acquiesce to a Mark of the Beast style system, whether that's 10 years from now or 100 years from now or even longer, doesn't matter, but to really set conditions to make that harder, to really make evil work for it, right? To make that even more difficult and to create conditions for believers to prepare for the gospel to be preached and so on. Right, so that could be what a third party is used for. Not saying it'll be permanent, and not saying it'll be perfect, but that could be what that party is used for. And yeah, because like I said, I think foreign entanglement to try to avoid, a World War III scenario, nuclear war scenario, what have you, and to put limits on artificial intelligence, to put limits on the surveillance state from expanding even more than it is right now, I think are big issues. And I think part of what this third party would do, like think about if you're on an airplane and if the cabin pressure changes and it's like those masks come down and, what do the people tell you? What do the stewardesses tell you at the beginning or the little safety video? Like, put the mask on your face before you help others put the masks on them, right? And so I feel like a lot of there's a lot of people that are like, well, in our country, we need to put the safety mask on us first before we start helping, anybody else. Anyway, so those are just some of the issues, the feelings, the ideas behind potentially what a third party could coalesce around, or maybe, yeah. I'll leave it there. So I think that Thomas Massie, some of y'all may or may not know who he is. I won't go back and rehash his race. Basically, he lost his seat in Congress in Kentucky during a primary. I think it became, I don't know if it was the most expensive U.S. House race in history or if it was just the most expensive primary in history. But either way, it broke records. It broke records for sure. And then it also raised a lot of questions about foreign involvement, foreign donations versus grassroots donations versus all these different kinds of things, right? And I think that there were people who that were supporters of Donald Trump that may not have realized that Thomas Massie is a natural ally to Trump, if provided Trump is true in certain things he has stated that he's wanted to do, right? And some could argue that Trump always was never sincere or genuine about, certain conservative principles or things he wanted to do. Once again, all that analysis is for a different place, different time. But yeah, Thomas Massie, if Trump was going to do certain things on the conservative agenda to actually really make America great again, so to speak, right? It's like Thomas Massie is a natural ally. And Thomas Massie seemed consistent when Trump did not. And I think a lot of people were beginning to buy the idea that Thomas Massie was somehow a traitor, when I think that he was looking at the blind spots of not just Trump, but the GOP establishment generally, right? And so, and I'm not here saying that Massie is perfect or won't ever make mistakes or whatever. Not the point. I'm just saying, embodied in this person and in that race, we were seeing something interesting where, okay, talking about different parties and such, let's go back to talking about neocons, right? So you have conservative versus neoconservative, okay? The problem with politics in America is that, like, progressives don't actually progress anything, or rather, they progress things that should not be progressed, which is actually a regression. It's a degeneration. It's going backwards. It's not really progress, not really helpful. And then in terms of conservatives, conservatism, I've heard some people call it conservative ink, doesn't really conserve anything. So it's like, I'll pick on the Daily Wire, for instance. It's like there are certain subjects that I think if they were really doing what they were supposed to do, would be talking about, but they don't. It's too taboo for them. But instead, every month during Pride Month, they'll talk about how terrible it is. And it's like, for conservative people, it's like, great. We already know that. We already know about that kind of stuff. Well, tell us something new. Why are you just trying to get us all angry and stirred up over the Pride Month thing? Okay, we already know. Got it. Got the memo. We can see it. But how do we actually, like, move forward, and what do we do? And anyways, fear in the disguise of conservation, right? So so this brings me to that neoconservative thing. They're not truly conserving life or liberty or the Constitution or the things that really ought to be conserved, but rather they have a big government with its surveillance, with its taxes, with its foreign involvements, with its enormous bureaucracy. But it's like the neoconservatives want to conserve that, but just give it a different flavor. Instead of a rainbow flag, it has the American flag, so, we're conservative. Changing out certain language and buzzwords for a different language and buzzwords that may resonate with people that, can see that the far left is, well, really, really far to the left and, is crazy, right? So, yeah, I think there's not enough people that understand, like, they just think the right or the Republicans, that equals conservative. No. Part of the referendum, if you want to call it that, or what the fight will be about is, so what do we actually want to conserve? Like we don't want the neocons anymore. We want actual conservation of our country and of humanity, really. Because that's really where a lot of the AI stuff comes into, right? And I think, because with AI, it's you don't want the surveillance state. You want to have your privacy. One of the things that Thomas Massie was really against was the surveillance in your cars, like having the automobile kill switch, like having a camera, an AI onboarded into your car, into all the new vehicles they want to put out, and you are like a prisoner in your own car. You're always being watched, and they can be stopped remotely from wherever. So, anyway, just trying to, more people should have championed, like, no, let's not do that, okay? So, I think by now, I've rambled enough. At least it feels like I am sometimes, because there's so many different directions you could go with this, and so many, things that I'd rather leave alone and not try to miss the big picture, the main point. No, I'm not. No, that's not us. Yeah, thank you though. So, where was I? So you've got the point now, kind of where the lines are being drawn, I think, at least from the perspective of the right, in terms of a third party, but I think it's also very appealing to a lot of people on the left, or whether you want to call them moderate Democrats or centrist independent sort of people. And with the AI issue too, it's yeah, that's where I was going. It's not just the surveillance; it's also well, conservation of the land, resources too, right? Um, these data centers, I think people are feeling this kind of whiplash where they've had the establishment talking about like, oh, the world's going to end in 12 years, global warming, climate change, humans are causing the climate change, don't drive your car, we need to kill off the cows, we need to not eat meat, like all this like crazy stuff where it's like, if there is, man, it's like, that's not causing climate change. Not at the not at the rate or the scale that people think they are. That's an excuse for you to hate yourself and not want to drive a car or go on an airplane and live life and eat meat and whatever. So it's like this hyper, not acuity, hyper fixation on these things and that you're told, and then you get the whiplash where it's like, well, let's build all the data centers and we better do it before China does. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you've been telling me not to eat the meat, not to drive the cars, whatever. Humans are bad for the environment, so let's build these enormous facilities that are going to put out these crazy frequencies and vibrations that are going to mess with the wildlife, mess with the people too. Um, you know, be like carcinogenic, like, you know, with 5G and stuff. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen like the stuff with like the 5G towers, and that is not good for you. Not good for you at all. All the water it will take up, the farmland and communities it will destroy. And so there's a lot of conservatives that, you know, don't like that either. And so I think like, you know, environmentally minded people on the left and environmentally minded, you know, folks on the right, they're like, hey, you know, we can unite behind this. But there's like something disingenuous about, you know, it seems like certain groups and parties and such, yeah, like I said, that whiplash, I guess you could say. This is the way it feels, right? So anyways, I am painting with a broad brush for a lot of these things, just trying to cover a lot of ground. So you have all the stuff in the makings for a third party. Maybe it will coalesce, maybe it won't, I don't know. But so let's end with a dream that I had. I don't remember if this was before or after the defeat of Thomas Massie for his seat in Kentucky for U.S. Congress. But the dream that I had, really quickly, there's a lot of minutia and details that I'm going to leave out. I just want to give this overview in which it begins where I'm like in a grocery store. And I don't quite remember if it was like people wearing like two different t-shirts or whatever, but it's like arguments and shouting and snide remarks turning into yelling that started happening. And but it wasn't between the left and right, Republicans and Democrats. It was between like the Massey type Republicans and like the establishment GOP type Republicans. And it's like, you know, just if you even stepped foot into that sphere, that realm where you've seen people on the right yelling at each other online, you know, over the Trump and Massey stuff, it was like that in real life. And it was like that in real life getting really, really heated in like a grocery store is what I saw. Not saying literally. I don't know, maybe there'll be some fight that breaks up in a grocery store and it makes the news. I don't know. But the idea of just being kind of like out and about in domestic life, the kind of tensions that people feel sometimes between left and right, it's like, could it possibly reach that between people who consider themselves right-wing, but it's that fissure between neoconservative versus conservative, even if people aren't consciously thinking that, because I don't think anyone like consciously is like, oh, I'm a neocon, I want to support other neocons. It's more of a derogatory thing, at least in my experience. If someone's proudly a neocon, I don't know, let me know. I'd be interested to see that. But just that idea where there's that fissure that we've been talking about for the past, 20 minutes or so. And so I see this altercation in a dream in a grocery store, and then it spills over into college campuses. And so what I was seeing was like, once again, these people on the right, a fissure on the right, very similar tensions that you see between right and left. And, but it didn't quite take to violence that you sometimes see between left and right or whatever. But it like almost got there. It was about to get there. And I saw like Christian groups on college campuses trying to do their thing, like have a service and talk about Jesus and whatever. And but it's like people were using those groups or infiltrating those groups, or like there were people that were very charged politically over this divide in the right, and you had the people that just wanted to concentrate and focus on Jesus, and then you had the people who really weren't there for the right thing, and it was kind of like their playground for, them trying to shape the right, and really in a way, which is scary, like further shape, which of these streams within the right was like the real Christian one or whatever, and but it got to the point where like there was lawfare being used, the way that you hear about the left and the right, like, anyways, lawfare, using lawsuits and such to bog down and hurt your political opponents, whether or not there's actually any real basis for a lawsuit or not, right? And like calling the cops on, because that's one thing I saw is like a university setting, trying to worship Jesus, but also this political stuff going on, and then particularly, and I'm not saying the not neocon people in this scenario. Once again, there's no like name for a party. Because it wasn't the libertarians. Like it was like there were a lot of people who were like, yeah, I'm done with the neocon Republican establishment party, but I don't want to be a libertarian. And it was this, it was something else, right? Anyways, I don't have a name. I don't know, and maybe it won't even happen. But it definitely, I think it captures the feeling that's there in the country. So whether it coalesces into a formal party that runs candidates and wins, seats in Congress or the Senate, I don't think the presidency, but I don't know. But just it starts moving the needle, right? It starts like there's a big enough movement to where the establishment machine, both left and right, notice it and see that it's a force to be reckoned with. And it just alters the conversation or direction of things going on in the country. And so, yeah, so in the dream, I'm just seeing whether it's like a grocery store, whether it's a college campus, calling the cops on people, using lawfare, stalking people, just very, very tense and, not good behavior, right? But then it got to a point where it's like a lot of people, like I don't know what happened specifically. I don't know what the catalyst was. Like I said, it's like they were getting police involved and something was happening, something was brewing. And then like a lot of I'm not saying not the politicians or the people in power, so to speak, but just a lot of your average citizens, a lot of your average people that may be politically minded or politically involved or just vote or at least voice something online. It's like the neocon side kind of went too far. And then they were ashamed because it's like, oh man, like where their conscience, they were pricked in their conscience. Like, oh man, like if and I'm not saying everybody who's a Republican is a Christian, definitely not, but a lot have that Christian, culture and ethos they're trying to live by or whatever. But anyways, there were a lot of Christians that were in that neocon kind of world in this dream, and something went too far, and a lot of them got struck in their conscience, is what I saw. So that's like the simple short of the dream. Just recapping it, just seeing different segments of life, from a grocery store to a college campus, seeing this heightened tension, but it going so far as to many people across the country that tend to lean more toward that neocon side, being pricked in their conscience, in their heart, and being like, oh man, this has gone too far, whatever that is. So that's essentially what I wanted to say, is just something seems to be brewing regarding a third party. Heck, I mean, Tucker Carlson talked about a third party. This isn't an endorsement for or against Tucker Carlson. Like I've said multiple times here, it's being above that, and every individual that has a platform with opinions. You can be nuanced about them. Hey, I overall like him or I overall dislike him, but I agree with him on these things. I disagree with him on these things. I may agree overall on this one thing, but I wish he hadn't said it this way. And have your nuance, have your discussions, think, use critical thinking, and pray, okay? Because God likes having discussions too. And God is also is nuanced too, right? It's like there is black and white in terms of good and evil, but there's also gray in terms of, things in the world being carried out and how things happen. So anyways, I've got another 40-minute video today. I guess I've just been doing longer ones recently. I'm going to try to shorten it up a bit and do more brief ones. I just think with some of these in America too, and I think for me, like, these videos about America is a bit too close to home in a sense where, and my background, I have some background working in that political world, so it's like there's so much from like, ugh, could go on and on, but which is why I think if you haven't yet, you should check out the videos where I talk about seeing Jesus. Check out the videos where I talk about casting out demons. Check out the videos where I talk about like Iceland and Yemen. I want to do a lot more videos about other countries too. I think that's really fascinating, really, really interesting. A lot of interesting opportunities to pray or to get out and to, do things there. But that doesn't mean I don't like America. I like, that idea of freedom and independence. It's not a libertine freedom to do whatsoever you want, but having a freedom without restraint of government to pursue a higher calling, that higher power, God, Jesus, to do what you ought to do to help make the world, your nation, your state or your province, your community, your city, a better place, to do better for your family, your children, your neighbors, and the freedom to be a vessel for God on the earth. So that's the idea of America, really, or at least the part of it that's like the heart and soul of it, or that should be at least. Yeah, pray, as always. And I think for now, I'll probably take a break from talking about some of the stuff I've seen regarding the United States. But yeah, so just let me know what you think about this. Let me know if you've had any dreams or that impressions upon your heart that God has shown you in prayer. Surrendered vision. I want to have my vision surrendered to Jesus. I want to inspire other people to have their visions surrendered to Jesus. Not to man-made doctrine or to church or to theology, but to real, authentic relationship with Jesus. And to be willing to be a fool for Jesus. And so, yeah, Surrendered Vision. Please subscribe and turn on notifications if you haven't already. Like, comment, share, all of that stuff. But most importantly, if you're hearing the sound of my voice, just get off here and contemplate what you've heard and go talk to God and talk to him about all kinds of things, including things not that I've been talking about. Just go talk to him and just take the feelings inside of you and being like, God, here's what I'm feeling. God, I invite you into my feelings. God, I invite you into my heart. Come live this life with me. I want to be partnered with you. I want to go on the adventure with you. I want to be with you. Come lead me and guide me. Even though I'm not perfect, you want to be with me. You want to live that life with me. And I want to live that life with you too. Even if there's days I don't feel like it or I mess up, but like ultimately, big picture, I know that's what I want. I want you in my life. So, thank you so much for watching. And yeah, I'm going to not talk about US stuff for a bit. I'm excited to do other videos. So stick around. Thank you all so much for watching. See you guys next time. Bye.